Welcome back, everyone. We're here again for another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series, where we dive into proven leadership ideas and, of course, we hear from the brilliant minds behind them. With us today is Antonio Taylor. Antonio is the VP of IT with Mission Healthcare, a home health, hospice, and transitional care service. He's also on the board of directors of a couple of nonprofit organizations, helping young people advance their career. And he's also the author of the book, Stop Trying to Be a Leader. I love the title, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, Antonio. And before that, he held various tech executive roles. And of course, we're thrilled to have him with us today. Antonio, it's an absolute pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about the conversation and thank you for welcoming me into your community.
Awesome. So you're clearly established and super successful on your leadership journey. When you think about your own progression, Antonio, what do you think are some of the reasons that got you to where you are today?
I would say probably the first reason, and probably one of the more important reasons why I got to where I was today is because somebody else paved the way for me to get here. Somebody else saw
Okay.
something in me. Early, my very first leadership role, I resisted the charge of being a leader. I
Okay.
was a tech, and I was working in tech, and I love doing tech. I love writing code. I love creating packages. I love that life. I love being the engineer. And my leader at that time said, "Hey, I think you are great at being a tech, but I think you're even better with people. I think you're even better in a leadership role. And we have an opportunity from an acquisition that we would love for you to go over and lead that small IT team." And I resisted. I'm being honest with you. I resisted it because I was really, I was just getting, a little bit, few years into my tech career, getting certifications, and I just felt like I was on this journey to become this top engineer. And so I resisted the notion to do that. And he
Mhm.
kind of pushed back. He's like, "Yeah, you are really good at that, but you're so much better at this. So much better at galvanizing people and strategizing and seeing the big picture and getting outside of the norm and coming up with creative ideas. Love learning, love being curious." And so finally I dove into it and I've been going ever since. And so I would say probably the biggest, one of the things that's helped me is having somebody that believes in me. And that
Mm.
same thing applies to everybody. Having somebody that sees something in you that you may not see in yourself or you may not be ready to embrace, and instilling that confidence in you to say, "Hey, you can do this. We're going to be right alongside with you and help you in your journey." And just embracing and knowing that that's actually possible. It's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, or biggest things that have happened to me along my journey.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that resistance that you described there and this change of heart or this change of mind towards stepping into leadership. Say a bit more about what was going on in your mind there. What caused the change ultimately?
Well, so it was ultimately, it came down to being convinced, and I knew this already, but like I said, I was so ingrained into the tech, into the the engineering side of it, but being reminded of how impactful I could be in other people's journey. Which at the core of leadership is what it is. Leadership is about building other leaders, building other people, right? Building people and empowering them to be the best version of themselves. That's something I had did, in my entire life. I grew up in the South. My grandparents raised me, and they always raised me to. It's always about community. It's always about building somebody up. It's always about paving the way for somebody else. And so I just kind of had to be reminded of my core of who I am and what I was, created to be, and realize that I'm still in the tech world. I'm just in a tech world in a different mindset, right? I'm no longer using my hands. I'm using more of my mind. I'm using more of my intuition. I'm using more of those soft skills to say, to still achieve the
Yeah.
same goal. I've always been goal focused, and I've always been the type of person who, it doesn't matter if I'm the one who is actually doing the work to achieve the goal, as long as the goal is being met. And so if I can provide the resources that somebody needs to get the goal met, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? And so I just kind of had to be like, wait, hold on. Number one, you guys do believe in me because you're bringing on a new acquisition and you're telling me you want me to go run it, which typically that's very rare. You want somebody
Right.
seasoned because with acquisition there comes a lot of anxiety, there comes a lot of transition, change, and all that stuff. And you see enough in me to make me want to, that's my first leadership charge. At that point, I had to just say, you know what, stop resisting what may be the inevitable and embrace it, right? And embrace the
Mhm.
change, right? Embrace it
Yeah.
as an opportunity for you to learn and
Mhm.
grow, to see what areas that you need to focus on, and then just walk into who that is.
Nice. I really like this focus on helping others grow, which is really in what you're
Hmm.
saying. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, you mentioned that you always had people encouraging you to do that. Let me talk a bit more about your mentors or ask you more about your mentors. I'm sure there were many people by your side who were trusted advisors, mentors, or in a similar role. What advice did you get from them that still resonates with you today?
So a couple of quick stories. When I one of my earlier roles in leadership, worked for a major hospital, and what they would do is they was bring the CIO in, and the CIO had an office that was way away from where the tech space was, and so he would come down once a month, meet all the new IT people, and I was coming up in the late '90s, early 2000s, and typically when the big boss comes in, everybody just kind of clamors up and, hey, don't say anything. We don't want to, we don't want to sound
Yeah.
stupid. And so he has these sessions where he talks about his journey, talks about a little bit about what we're trying to do at the hospital from an IT perspective, and then he opens the door for questions. And I had got wind that nobody ever asked questions, and so I was like,
Mm.
man, that's weird. Why does nobody ever ask questions? And so it ended up happening that he and I were sitting like he was on one end of the table and I was at the other, so we were facing each other. And he comes to us and he goes, "Hey, anybody got any questions?" And you can hear crickets in the room, and nobody says anything. And I finally raised my hand and I'm like, I gotta ask this question. And my question to him was, hey, how do I get your job? In which, people were looking at me like I was crazy,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is taboo. Like, why would you just started? You already want to be,
Right.
you want to be the boss. Well, I wasn't, and I may have asked the question wrong. I wasn't trying to understand how to take his job. I wanted to know, hey, what's the path that I need to take? What do I need to do? Back to mentoring, right? And he looked at me after about 10 seconds of silence and he just smiled. He goes, first of all, nobody ever asks questions in these rooms. And he's like, second, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. And he goes on to say, he goes, you know what? I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to take you under my wing. And I want us to have regular monthly conversations. This is day
I
one of
love
me
it.
employed. He
Mhm.
goes, I want to have regular conversation because you're showing me that you have an idea of where you want your journey to end. And I can help you get there. And that led to, he would send me case studies and say, hey, tell me how you would respond in this. And he would invite me to meetings. And so I would say for me, ask questions even in early. Always remain curious. Always remain curious. Like that's so important to ask those who have done this before. Hey, how did you get here? Right? What advice would you give me? The second thing I'll say, there's a mentor who also with the CEO of a hospital took me in and he gave me three pieces of advice I'll never forget. He said, number one, always look the part, meaning always dress for how you want what job you want, right? Even if you're not in that role, that stuff matters, right? You want to
Yeah.
look like an executive when you go into these conversations. Number two, set yourself apart from the crowd. Find out what makes you different. What is so unique about you? And the beauty in that, I talk about this in my book, is all of us have a unique given
Mm.
talent that was given to us from creation that's different and independent and specific to us. So find out what that is that separates you from the crowd. And the third thing you said is don't be afraid to leave. And that's been so impactful for me because sometimes the opportunities we see aren't in the places that we are, and you got to be okay with saying, hey, you know what, I may have grown as much as I can grow in this place that I'm in. I got to go somewhere else to be stretched. I got to go somewhere else to be challenged. I got to
Yeah.
go somewhere else to grow my abilities.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a really powerful story, Antonio. Thank you for sharing that.
No, probably
Now,
good.
I'll come to your book in a moment, but let me ask you a different question first, and then I would
Okay.
love to dive into your book. Again, reflecting on your journey, talk to me about a moment where you were surprised about something, a situation where you thought you have a really clear idea of how this is going to play out. You thought you knew you had this, you knew what's coming next, and reality was different. It just ended up being completely different.
Oh, that's the story of my journey. I mean,
That's a day.
unfortunately, there's always, yeah, that's just a day. Unfortunately, there's always those opportunities
Okay.
for learning. I always say there are opportunities and not so much failures. But there are a couple of times when I was tasked with some major projects. One of them, I was tasked with, and I was tasked by my boss with getting us to move over to Office 365 and go from on-prem exchange to online. And I was all excited and giddy, and I had been meeting with Microsoft about how this all looks and so
Mhm.
forth and so on. And my leadership was like, hey, you want to grow in this area, so you're going to present this to the CFO. You'll put together the presentation, and I put it together and I practiced, and I had all these pretty slides, and I literally go into the CFO's office and I give this phenomenal presentation, right? And he looks at me, he goes, so what's broken? And I go, well, nothing's actually broken, but this is just the thing we should do. And he goes, but what's broken? And I was like, hey, it's not really broken. It's just what everybody's doing is going to help us with all these, it's going to speed up, the way we do business,
Hmm.
all these things. And he's looking at me, he goes, but what's broken? And I was like, so I'm stopped, and I'm
Yeah.
stopped in front of like leadership and the executive room. And he goes, you're asking me to spend more money, but you're not telling me what's broken. You're not solving a problem. You're talking to me about a tool that you think is going to be great without coming down to my level and having me understand what problem are you trying to solve.
Yeah.
And the light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never doing tech for tech's sake again. I'm going to listen to
Mm.
the business and understand
Wow.
what the problem is. Now he tells me, he goes, now I'm gonna be honest, this is a phenomenal presentation. Like, for your first time being in a room with us, and I wasn't even a director, I'm just a manager, so I was
Yeah.
levels below this room. He goes, this is phenomenal. You're extremely polished. You're extremely good. I don't understand why you're not in a higher role. So he gave me a little bit of comfort in knowing, like, this has
Mm.
nothing to do with what you presented, right? I just want you to reframe your thinking. And he actually goes, I want you to come back to me in 30 days with this same proposal, but I want it to be different.
Wow.
So I go back
My
in 30
word.
days.
Okay.
I go back in 30 days. I figured out how to narrate it around a problem, right? Go back in 30 days, sell it. I talked about the ROI. He goes, okay, you had me at the ROI. You should have led with that, right? Because I figured out how to do
Hmm.
total cost of ownership and say, hey,
Hmm.
year one, it may be more, but by year five, we're going to be saving. So I figured all of that out, and I started speaking his
Mm.
language. I went in there and presented it. He signed off and he said, approved. This is why this is so ironic. A month later, COVID hits, and we got to send everybody home. So now our journey in sending people home became easier because you just
Yeah.
log online and access all. And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad we decided to do this. When we did, because now it makes everybody be able to say we don't have to send equipment home
Yeah.
with you. We don't have to do any of this stuff. You can just log on
Yeah.
MFA and access your email." So the problem ended up manifesting itself because I spoke about the ability to work from anywhere.
Yeah.
I spoke about the ability to not be confined to an office, and it just so happened COVID hit and everybody was forced to go home, and we were able to utilize that tool. We
Yeah.
were able to utilize Ultra 65 in the manner that it was designed because of that.
But what a great way of the CEO to shift your thinking there, right? And to
Yes,
get you over into the business mindset from maybe more a tech leaning mindset. And I'm sure
yes.
that lesson sticks.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to ask you about the past. Now let's look at today, about
Hmm.
where you are in the leadership journey today. And I imagine the book is one way of passing on what you've learned from your leadership journey. Stop trying to be a leader.
Hmm.
So say something
Hmm.
about the book, Antonio. Say something about the ideas behind it and some of the core lessons in there.
So I'll start with the title because the title is catchy, and I wanted to
Yeah.
do that on purpose because I wanted to get everybody's attention because we're living in a world where everybody's trying to learn how to be a better leader,
Hmm.
and I write a book literally called "Stop Trying to Be a Leader." And the premise in the mindset behind the title is this: you you don't have to try to be what you already are. So
Mm.
stop trying to perform, stop trying to get validation from others, stop seeking
Mm.
affirmation from people to tell you that you're already good at what you do. I said earlier, we all have these innate abilities that were given to us. We all have these unique skills that were given to us when we were born. We didn't know what they meant. We had no idea. I had no idea why when I was growing up, I was always
Yeah.
helping everybody in class, right? I just felt like I didn't want anybody to fail. I just want to help you as much as I can. I didn't realize later on in life that was going
Hmm.
to be a superpower. It's like, hey, I want to empower you to be the best version of yourself. I want you to show up in a different way because I know you have that in you. So the title is about really just stop trying to be what you already
Yeah.
are, right? Everybody's the leader. whether you have a title or not, because somebody's watching you, and somebody's going to look at this podcast and say, man, I want to be like them,
Yeah.
which means now their eyes are on you. You're leading them whether you realize that or not. So understand that already. You are a leader. We all are leaders in some facet. And then stop trying to perform. And so some of the things that I talk
Mm.
about in the book that kind of, hurt me was I was performing more than I realized I was,
Mm.
right? I was doing what other people told me to do. I was saying how the other, if I went into a room and I had a great idea, I may not have said it because somebody may have said, "Hey, nobody's talked in these rooms, so don't say
Yeah.
anything because we don't want you to come across as being, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing." And so I would be quiet, and later on I would find out like, "Hey, why didn't you say something if you knew this was a bad idea?" And I was like, I was just kind of groomed. Hey, you just go ahead, you just sit down and just be quiet, or that person is difficult to work with, and we just kind of let them go off. And so I started to realize how much I was performing, and to the point that I looked inward and I said, I don't even know who I am as a leader anymore. I've worn this mask so much that I have
Wow.
no clue
Wow.
at who I am as a leader in the core of who I am. I would go in rooms and sit at tables, and I'm the only one in there of color, and I'm literally telling myself in my mind like, oh, I don't belong here. Now nobody made me feel that way. That was just my
Yeah.
innate thought
I
process
get it.
because I'm different. And now I'm saying, wait, if you're different, you're the most important person in a room because you have a perspective nobody else has. And so now you get to bring something to the table that nobody thought about. So instead of you seeing that as a negative, see that as a positive. And so I talk a lot about these truths in the book and some
Mm-hmm.
of my experiences. I talk about how it's important to get out of your own mind and get out of your own way. Imposter syndrome is real, right? Imposter syndrome is not something that we can just say, oh, it's a false made up. No, there's, imposter syndrome still rises in me like, oh
Yep.
my God, I got to go to this important meeting.
Yep.
Do I got is my presentation right? Am I going to say
Am
everything?
I
I got to
ready?
craft this
Am I good
email.
enough?
Yeah, am I
Mm.
ready?
Yeah.
Am I good enough? I'm writing this
Mm.
email and I've proofread it 25 times
Yeah.
because I want to make sure that, wait, I need to change the tone. And so, and imposter syndrome is real. And I talk about it in the book. I give I give you this spoiler. At the end of the book, I talk about getting out of your own way and how you
Mm.
overcome some of these challenges mentally. And
Yep.
what I say is, I tell everybody to write a life resume. Right now, we know what a resume is. A resume is, hey, I got a job that I'm applying for. I'm going to put all my highlights that are relevant to this job that I'm applying for. Well, that's great for that role, but when it ends up happening, you typically omit some critical things that you've done in your life, right? That may
I love it.
contribute to you getting the job. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what the life resume does, it allows you to go back and reflect on your life, and you go back as far as you want to go. I go
Mm-hmm.
all the way back to seventh grade. I was chosen
Mm-hmm.
best all around by my peers, and I'm like, okay, wait. So in the seventh grade, somebody thought enough of me to realize that I had a skill set that I was good at
Mm-hmm.
everything. So I don't have to. I don't need affirmation anymore for that. That's part of my journey now. And so the reason why the life resume is so powerful is because usually when we go into positions in places where we're not sure of ourselves, it's because we think we don't have the experience,
Yep.
right? Well,
Yep. Yep.
if you were raised in an army family, you traveled all over the world. You're an
Mm-hmm.
expert at change management. You don't need anybody to give you any schooling on that. Every year you were at a different high school. You
Right.
had to meet and
Yep.
so you're an expert at change management. You should probably think about that. If you
Yep.
were a single parent, or you were from another country, you had to come to somewhere that's foreign to you. You're an expert at diversity. You're an expert at those things. You know how to pivot these titles and these phrases
Yep.
we use in business. Hey, when something's not going right, you got to pivot. Well, I've been pivoting all my life, right? If you're a single parent and you raise some kids to be successful without a lot of support, think about how resilient you are. Think about how you can go into an organization and say, hey, this is a wreck, but that's okay. I know how to be calm. I know how to be reserved. I know all these critical skills that you have that have been
Yep.
built inside of you
Yep.
through your life
Mm-hmm.
experiences could help you understand you don't
Yep.
ever have to question who you are
Yep.
again.
Yep.
And so the
Nice.
book is really about getting out of your way, getting out of your own
Mm-hmm.
way, and realizing you're talented, you're gifted, and you're able to do whatever you've been
Yep.
created here to do. Just own that and walk into it.
Absolutely awesome. And I take it it's available on Amazon. People can order it
It's
there
available on Amazon. People can go there and order it.
under your name, or did you use a pseudonym? It's
No, it's
under
under
your
my
name.
name. It's under my
Awesome.
name. And I have to tell people it's a challenging book to read because it
Okay.
makes you look inward.
Okay.
It makes you look inward. It makes you can't blame the
Yep.
company. You can't blame your upbringing.
No,
You can't blame
you've
your
got to take full
it's
ownership.
you. You
Yep.
got to take full ownership and
Yep.
accountability. So
Yep.
it's a difficult read because it makes you look inside.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. Thank you for bringing this to the conversation, Antonio.
No,
Let me ask
no.
you another question about today, right? I said, let's take a look
Uh-huh.
at where we are today. When you look at where you are today, and I'm not asking about companies, titles, or anything like that, I'm asking again about your own development. When you look at where you are today, what's an area where you feel there is room for growth? There is something that you want to focus on and say, there might be more. There's something else that I can do.
Oh, this is a great question, and I don't want to make the answer too vague, but I am,
Okay.
but I'm going to explain. It's everything. I mean, the way that we grew up in business has changed so much. When you
Mm,
think about like the way technology is done now, when you think about AI, when you think even
mhm,
about the workforce, right? When you think about people that are coming into the workforce now, we're dealing with the incoming workforce. They've worked on technology their entire life,
right.
right? And
Right.
so all they know is technology. I'm still used to crafting my own email and things of that nature. And I'm still used to old school type, working and hey, show up, you do your job, and I'm used to that. Well, now,
That's good.
I mean, people can come in and do the same level of work in 3 hours, and so now it's like, dang, am I? Do I force them to work 6 hours because that's what I did, or do I say, hey, you guys can do this in three? Let's figure out some other stuff that you it's changing the whole dynamic of how we show up. Remote work is something that's I'm an
Yeah.
extrovert. I love people, right? And so it's like I want to be out and I want to be involved. And so I'm learning how it can't always be about me. It's never about me. I'm learning to adjust my mindset.
Hmm.
I'm learning to, okay, you know what? I can't keep talking about how scary AI is. Let me go learn it myself. Let me figure out how I can use it to enhance my own,
Yeah.
ability to do my job and see how I can bring that to the table. So I'm going back to something that I was told all and something that I always say is remaining curious, right?
Mm,
You know, I'll be honest, there are times when you get to a certain level when you kind of feel like you should stop. And that's where I was. I was like, hey, I've reached it. I'm here. I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to grow. I'm at the top of the food chain. What else am I supposed to do other than, understand business? And that's just the wrong mentality to have. And so I've kind of reflected and gone back after writing the book. It made me go back and really reflect and say, hey man, there's some things you should have learned 2 years ago that you've kind of dropped the ball on because you were enrolled,
wow.
you're in position, you were doing
Wow.
these things already.
Okay.
And now the world is starting to look a lot different than it did when, 5 years ago. You're behind in a lot of these, and you think about this. I'm in technology. How can you be not learning every day? What's new today is old tomorrow. But my mindset was like, I don't need to learn this. I'm good. We're not going to use this in my organization. And now I'm looking at it as like, this is how I present new. This is how I bring, fresh ideas to the organization because I'm learning all over again
Yeah.
about the capabilities that are out there. And so for me, is hey, just go back and remain curious. Go. I
Yeah.
challenge myself because I love reading. So I read a book
Mm,
a month, right, on different things. And before I wrote my book, all my books were on leadership. Now I'm reading other books, right? Now I'm
mm,
reading other people's journeys and other people's stories and trying to see, man, how can I glean from this person or some nuggets that I can get that I can now apply to my life. And so I'm just trying to learn everything. I'm trying to learn AI. I'm trying to learn, you know, business models. I'm trying to learn even I've been in healthcare for 20 years. And this is my first journey into home health and hospice. I had never knew all the rules and law. So now I'm learning that I'm like, oh my god, this is so interesting. I can't just apply the same concept across the board because, I'm in
yeah.
a different avenue now. And so for me,
Very
it's
cool.
everything.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's learning how to convey,
Yeah.
messages on a podcast, right? I'm new to this podcast stuff because of
Yeah.
the book. It's opening up those opportunities. But it's like, hey, when you go speak to a people, make sure you're giving value. Make sure you're giving them tangible things they can take away that they can apply to their
Yeah.
life or apply to their
I
career
love it.
journey, and not just going in there with
Yeah.
just fluff, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, he's a great speaker, but I don't know what to do after this. It's like, no, go write a life resume, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you some tangible things. So it's learning all over again, and now putting myself in that mindset where I remain curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Let me ask you a last question, Antonio, and then we're going to land the plane. If you could change one thing about how most leaders lead in their organizations, let's say we have a magic wand and we could change something about how leadership very often plays out, what would you change?
Um, I think I would change the mindset around leadership is about people. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how many projects you've successfully done. It doesn't matter how much money you've made the company. If you're not empowering and building people,
Mm,
then you failed as a leader.
mhm,
And Succession management is something we talk about, but it's rarely done. And I challenge people even more now when I talk to leaders and I say, forget succession management.
Yeah.
If your CEO said, "Hey, I got to go away for a week," and you run the company, do you even know how to run the company?
Mm.
Right? Are you prepared to step in that role and say, dang, this is not about now I got to understand business, I got to understand marketing, I got to understand sales, I got to
Interesting.
understand HR, I got to understand finance, I got to understand the entire facets of the business. Well, the only way I understand that is I got to be in a room and I got to start having conversation with these people.
Yeah.
Leadership is about people. It's not about tasks, it's not about roles, it's not about
Yeah.
tools. It's all about people. And I feel if we spent more time as leaders investing in people, the work will take care of itself.
Awesome. Antonio, thank you so much. Been a real pleasure having
Thank
you
you
in the
very much.
conversation, and many things will stick
Thank
with
you.
me. You're right. The life resume was one of these things, and I'll certainly pick up your book. Thank you so much, Antonio.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us again for our next podcast. And most importantly, keep your brain cells active.